following is a podcast brought to you by the Alex Kirsch Project.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
More classified documents are found. This time, former Vice President Mike Pence is the culprit. What exactly is going on, and why are our elected officials and former elected officials so irresponsible with classified material? Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota was removed from her Foreign Affairs Committee due to the supposed anti-Semitic remarks she made about Israel, and her battle buddy, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, comes to her aid. Nikki Haley, former UN ambassador under Donald Trump and former governor of South Carolina, is expected to announce her candidacy for president in 2024. What's the hype, and what are her chances exactly? China decided to float a balloon for research purposes, and somehow it's managed to drift over the United States. With tensions mounting in the Asian Pacific, the U.S. swears it will defend Taiwan against China if need be. Then finally, Miami-Dade police yesterday unveiled a Black History Month theme patrol car, and social media is in a firestorm right now. What's the blowback, and was this a great way to show unity, or is this just another public relations nightmare? All this on this week's episode of Current Events on Tap. Well, good evening, listeners, and welcome to another episode of Current Events on Tap with your host, Alex Kirsch. Podcast from the Alex Kirsch Project. Hey, that's me, Army retiree, truck driver, pragmatic progressive, and political commentator. If this is your first time listening, please do me a solid and hit like and share and subscribe to my Spreaker, YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. This podcast gives you this week's current events, and I'd like to do what I also call
the Beer of the Week.
The Beer of the Week is where I pick one beer of the week, and I review it based upon price and presentation, pour, aroma, and taste, and then I give it an overall rating. Be sure to catch me every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Spreaker, and catch me at your earliest convenience on YouTube, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, amongst other platforms. Just type in the Alex Kirsch Project, or you can also type in Current Events on Tap, and you will find this podcast. Be advised, there may be some coarse language in this podcast, but I do apologize in advance, but you know what? I'm a veteran. I'm a truck driver. It's practically part of my vocabulary. So how's everybody doing this week? Hopefully everyone's had a good, safe week. It is cold as hell because Puxatony Phil found that his shadow, and that means 6 more weeks of winter. Yay. You know, I keep telling myself, living in Michigan, there's no tornadoes that happen very often. There's no hurricanes. There's no Marjorie Taylor Greens. There's no cockroaches. There's no alligators. So I'm just counting my blessings as much as I possibly can, but it is still cold out. Like, holy crap. Like, I'm going to check the temperature right now. How cold is it right now, okay? According to what the forecast, it's going to tell me what the temperature is. It says 6 degrees, feels like -2, there's snow on the ground. That's cold. I'm sorry, but ladies and gentlemen, that is just freaking cold, and I don't like it. But you know what? It is what it is. It's worth it because, like I said, around here in the spring and the summer and the fall time, it is gorgeous around here. So if I have to put up with a bit of cold, extreme cold weather, I won't like it, but I'll deal with it, okay? This is all part about, I guess, of being a Michigander. So, it's my first real official winter, let's put it that way, because last winter I was traveling all across the country, so I was usually in places like Arizona, Florida during the wintertime. So now I get to actually experience a full Michigan winter, essentially. So, but, I was going to do a show last week, but last week was kind of a busy week. I was just exhausted. I was tired. I just didn't feel up to it last week, so I ended up not doing it. But I just want to say, last Thursday, Claire and I went and saw the Book of Mormon in Midland, Michigan, and I can honestly say it was one of the greatest shows I've seen. Now, I've never really been to a Broadway musical, but I was raised off of musicals, and I can honestly say it was fantastic. The music was catchy. The story was good. I mean, it was hilarious. Like, of course, what do you get from Trey Parker and Matt Stone, the creators of South Park? They created, like, a fantastic musical. I mean, like I said, the songs were really insanely catchy, but they were also hilarious at the same time. And I highly recommend for those of you, I mean, let's just put it this way. If you don't like coarse language, don't go see it. But if you've got a really good sense of humor or something like that, or if you're okay, just, want to open your mind up to different kinds of musicals, this is definitely a show I highly recommend that you go see. I mean, it was great, and I'm so glad my wife got tickets. I mean, we were pretty far back, but honestly, there was great seats all throughout the theater up in Midland, so I can honestly say I don't regret it. I loved it. I recommend everybody go out and see it. But yeah, it was a very, very busy week. Most of the time my truck was actually kind of broken down, but, it is what it is. Technology, vehicles break down, no big deal. I was able to get it taken care of and stuff like that. It was still another good week of just truck driving. Just got to be careful because it's snowy out there, and you really can't trust too many drivers nowadays because some of them just don't drive to the conditions. That's one of my nightmares, honestly, as a truck driver. You'll run across those people that don't really drive to the conditions, and they might spin out of control and cause an accident. That is something that scares the absolute hell out of me. But, let's just hope that it does not happen. I want people to drive to the conditions because it is dangerous out there throughout the snowy time. So it's that simple. But anyway, without further ado, as much as I would like to talk more about my day, talk about my week and stuff like that, it is time for
The Beer of the Week.
The beer of the week this week is Hofbräu Original from the Hofbräu House Brewery based out of Munich, Germany. Now, time for a little bit of history. The Hofbräu House Brewery is founded by Duke Wilhelm V, the Duke of Bavaria, on September 27, 1589. Due to the idea of importing beer from other regions within the country of Germany or from other parts of the world, it was quite expensive since beer in Germany is believed to be believe it or not, it was actually quite expensive. It was actually more of a luxury for the upper class people, not so much the common folk, all right? So people like you and me, we probably wouldn't get a chance to drink the beer. So Duke Wilhelm V wanted to create the brewery in order to give the ducal court beer to reduce the overall cost of beer so it didn't cost them quite nearly so much. Now, it was originally where the ducal hen house was located, and in 1610, the brewery was then known as the Brown Hofbräu House because it's the most popular beer sold, and it had kind of like a brownish color to it, which is more along the lines of like a dark beer or a stout type beer. Now, again, this was only reserved for the members of the ducal court. Now, what makes beer from the Hofbräu House so special is due to the ingenuity of Heimrun Pongratz, a monk from the Benedictine monastery from Giesenfeld, who planned the brewery's construction and was the first brewer of the brewery. Now, what also makes beers like the beer from the Hofbräu House is due to the 1516 purity law that was started by Duke William IV, to which it stated, "No other ingredient shall be added to beer, only barley, hops, and water shall be taken," which still continues to this day. Granted, now there have been some changes that have been made. For example, years later, yeast was added along with coriander, bay leaves, wheat, what have you, okay? However, it's safe to say that Hofbräu House beer has been using the same simple ingredients and perfecting their craft for 500 years. That's right, 500 years. Longer than the United States has been a recognized country, essentially. Now, since its creation, there are about 24 other Hofbräu House locations in the world, to include Seoul, Genoa, Dubai, Stockholm, and Philadelphia in the United States. There are also Hofbräu beer gardens located in certain parts of the United States. One I know for sure is in Panama City, Florida. I have also had the honor, however, of drinking beer on tap from the Hofbräu House in Munich, Germany, many, many years ago. Now, I can tell you it was an absolute madhouse, but the food was fantastic. I mean, I'm a sucker for German food already, but the beer was excellent. This is when I first got subjected to the Hofbräu Original. That's what I asked for because I just want to keep it simple. I just asked for Eins Bier bitte, and of course they asked what kind of beer, because they could tell I was trying my best to speak German, but I don't speak very good German because it's a really hard language. And so I asked, what are the options? They said Hofbräu Original. I was like, let's just go the Hofbräu Original. And they brought it to me. It came in like a giant mug. Took a drink of it. And I was like, this is delicious. But like I said, the beer was excellent. Now, they also have different kinds of beers. Hofbräu Dunkel, which I have reviewed before, and I gave it really good praise. Kristallweissen, Oktoberfest beer, Muncher Weiss, and Hofbräu Milbach. Now, these are all different kinds of beers, which I will eventually go into further detail later on down the line. However, let's talk about this beer tonight. It has an alcohol percentage of 5.1%. The type of beer that is brewed is Hellas beer. Now, let's talk about it in price and presentation. It's going to get a 5 out of 5. I bought this 6-pack at the JB Party Store in Buena Vista Township, Michigan for $10.99. Now, that's not including tax. You can, however, buy this in any liquor store that sells import beer. Just look at the German section. If you see German beer, you might find it there. If you don't, I'm sorry. Sucks to be you. If you do, however, live in Frankenmuth, you can buy it at Kern's most definitely. I am all about the design. You see the artwork of looks like the original Hofbräu house that was used to look like it might have looked like back in the day, in its heyday. The HB for Hofbräu house that just sits below a crown, signifying the history of this beer that was originally served to royalty. This goes to show that they have not forgotten where they came from, where they got their start from. So it's something just very delicate. But honestly, for $10.99, including tax, you definitely get your money's worth with this beer. So easy 5 out of 5. Pour. It's a very gorgeous pour. Now, it might seem weird for me to say that it's a gorgeous pour, but it has the perfect balance of the foamy head that you get from once you initially pour it in. Now, the foamy head might disappear after a little while, but it's just, it sticks around long enough for it to be noticed. Let's put it that way. But it has this brilliant gold presentation of the light gold color. Now, whether you pour this from tap or you drink from the bottle, as long as you know what you're doing pour-wise, you get a perfectly balanced beer with the foamy head to provide that extra beery goodness. Oh, yeah. Now, aroma. Oh, yeah. You can smell it. The slight sweet smell. The malty smell. It's just an absolute delight for the senses. Upon first smell, you almost feel like you're in the Alps of Germany. Okay, maybe not. But it smells delightful all the same. I mean, I love the way this beer smells. Now, it doesn't smell nearly as delightful as some other ones. But I tell you, ooh, God, if this was a perfume smell, oh goodness gracious. Well, maybe not, okay? I mean, perfume smell, that takes it a bit far. So anyway, let's talk about the taste. Oh, you know what that means. When it's time to talk about taste, it's time to take another taste. A symphony of flavor, as simple as it may sound. Only a few ingredients, but my goodness. It's just sometimes less is more. This is what you get when you have 500 years of beer-making history to back you up. What's amazing is you can drink this at both room temperature or cold. It still maintains its flavor. This is a beer that I could just pull out of a grocery store that's sitting in the aisle and just open it up and I will drink it like right there on the spot. I've drinking this beer at room temperature and I've drinking it cold and it still tastes exactly the same. And you know me, I'm a person that likes a beer at room temperature and cold. It might seem weird to some, but honestly, I feel like beer drank at room temperature is exactly how it's meant to be drank. But you know, honestly, there's something special about drinking it cold. But this is one that maintains its taste. But again, they've got history on their side, okay? There are other beers out there that can't even touch this thing with a mile-long pole. Let's just call it for what it is. So, overall, let's give it a 5 out of 5 with a badass seal of approval from me. So good. I had to drink from Das Boot tonight. That's right, I am drinking from the boot tonight. Budweiser might say that they're the king of beers, but there is only one real king of the beers made for real royalty, and that king is the Hofbräu Original. All hail to the king. This beer is the cream of the crop and has no equal. This is the greatest beer I have ever tasted, and I still will fight to the death. I will fight anybody in the street saying how great this beer is. It truly is a fantastic beer to behold. It's a true winner on my book. What the hell are you waiting for? Go give this beer a try. If you don't like it, well, guess what? You just have no real palate. I'm sorry. Okay. I will definitely admit that it's definitely a shooter's preference, but to me, this beer is the greatest. It's cost effective. It's nothing fancy about it. It's just simple ingredients. It's got beautiful history behind it and just tastes fantastic. It takes me back to when I was stationed in Germany. I love this beer. I can't say enough good things about it. I mean, I could drink this beer. Like, I could buy this beer. If I had to buy this beer for the rest of my life, I would be happy. It just, oh, God, I just got to have another drink real quick before I continue. So here's the thing about, like, when you drink out of the boot, okay? You have to kind of drink from at an angle, because if you just try to drink it straight away, you're going to get the really bad air pocket that forms up, and you'll hear like a blub, 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 blub. It's kind of like when you, like in the old cartoons, you see the bubbles foaming up. It's the same concept, essentially. You just got to be careful, because if not, it's just like you're going to get a little splashback from the bubble. So you got to be really, really careful. So anytime you drink from the boot, just, use or beware. Try to drink it at an angle so that way you don't actually get the whole bubble effect anyway. So again, this beer gets a 5 out of 5, and the only way to drink a German beer is out of das Boot. It's that simple. And now, on to tonight's topics. So now, former Vice President Mike Pence has come forward saying that he has found classified materials in his possession. It appears that we have a very serious problem in this country in regards to the possession and securement of classified material. When Trump did it, there were those that loved Donald Trump and said, oh my God, this is the worst attack on our republic in this nation's most recent history. When Joe Biden was found to have classified material, those same people went absolutely ballistic, talking about how, oh my God, how irresponsible. He had this material since he was vice president. But now that it's former Vice President Mike Pence, they are awful quiet about it. How funny is that? It's so interesting how that works, huh? I mean, it's so funny like how one person can do it, you're outraged in the way it was carried out. Another person does it, you're outraged because they were part of another political party. And then it happens again because they're your political party, you're quiet. I'm sorry. Is there no consistency with people like this? So I listened to the podcast Legal Eagle. If you haven't had a chance, go check it out. Legal Eagle is a great channel. They talk about the legality of certain issues, and they break it down. Like they will do a complete lawyer overview of movies like My Cousin Vinny, A Few Good Men. They'll also talk about, like, for example, the Alex Jones lawsuit. They'll talk about the Rudy Giuliani lawsuit. And they also talked about the possession of classified documents with Donald Trump, Mike Pence, and Joe Biden. They did a fantastic breakdown of it all. And they came at it from a completely, legal perspective. Yeah, people can say, oh, well, these guys are obviously very progressive. Well, they came at this from the standpoint of the law. And the thing that they made it most interesting, this is what made all those situations common and similar. It's the fact that people were in possession of these classified documents, and whether they were in possession willingly or knowingly is still to be determined. As of right now, what we know is that people were in possession and had unsecured classified material, and they shouldn't have been in possession of this classified material. But here's the main difference. Joe Biden, our president, and former Vice President Mike Pence are cooperating. You heard it, folks. They have been cooperating. When President Biden and his people found out that they had classified documents, they didn't deny everything. They didn't try to deflect. They didn't try to blame other people. They invited the FBI to come investigate. And they sound like a series, maybe dozens of documents here, a couple documents there, a couple documents there. And at Mike Pence, like the FBI apparently is going to be investigating Mike Pence in regards to this. And they're probably going to find some more. Who knows? I have no idea. But the fact of the matter is, these guys are cooperating. Donald Trump, however, refused to cooperate. On multiple occasions, as a matter of fact, he said, oh, no, we don't have any documents. His lawyer, Christina Bobb, even indicated that we have no more classified documents, and she signed on a document which puts her under penalty of perjury, saying we no longer have any more classified documents. And then when they raided it, it's because they had a warrant. They went through the process, the whole legal process, and when they raided it, it turns out that they were validated in their raid. So why is it that the conservative base, or specifically the MAGA base, is freaking out about this? It's because they want to continue to save face with their God Emperor, Donald Trump. It's that simple. But there seems to be a great deal of trouble in regards to the possession of classified information, especially with people in power. This is a significant problem, and I'm going to say for what it is. I don't care if you're Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative. If you are in possession of classified material when you should not have it, and if you're that irresponsible about it, what else have you been irresponsible of? Like, I remember when I had a secret clearance. Like, if I misplaced any security documents or classified documents, that was my ass. Like, that's like that with any lower level echelon person like myself. That's your ass right there. There is no denying it. When you leak classified material, that's your ass. If you found that you're leaking classified material to people that should not know about this stuff, that's your ass, especially if people find out about this. So why is it that there's two different levels of justice within this country, when there's no real consistency? That's what I would love to know. And for the record, I say this time and time again. I don't care who you are. When it comes to stuff like this, there should not be two different levels of the justice system. Now, should it be found out that some people improperly packed the current president or the former president, they should definitely be held to account. Will they? I don't know. That's not for me to decide. But I like the fact that Merrick Garland is doing the right thing by appointing special counsel to oversee this. Because Merrick Garland cannot personally investigate Donald Trump. Why? Because he is now a candidate for president of the United States. He's already announced his candidacy, so therefore you cannot investigate them because then it shows bias. He also can't investigate President Biden because that's his boss and that shows bias as well. So you have to appoint a special counsel for situations like this. But people are still losing their freaking minds about this. There are people out there really, oh my God, they rated Donald Trump, but they're not rating Joe Biden. Why is there two different sets of... It's because you are not understanding the law. I don't even understand the law, but the way it was explained, like they even have precedents. They even have it written out in complete law and legal jargon that I cannot understand, that I cannot read, but the way they explain it, it makes perfect sense. Again, please go check out Legal Eagle. They lay it out in a perfect format that you can comprehend and understand. But the thing is, it's so amazing, like how everybody is just losing their freaking minds about how there's two different justice systems. Yeah, there is two different justice systems. If one person in a certain prestigious position leaks classified material, it really depends on how bad it is, but they might just get a slap on the wrist. But a lower echelon person is going to get the freaking book thrown at them. General Petraeus is a good example of this. This guy leaked classified material. He pled guilty and pretty much didn't have to spend any time in a jail cell or any prison sentence, from what I understand. He took responsibility for his actions, which I get. Imagine if that was Private Joe Snuffy did the exact same thing. Well, first off, I don't think Private Joe Snuffy would have the, access to some of the material that, General Petraeus had. But the thing is, though, the fact of the matter is like, Joe Snuffy would get the book thrown at them if they did the exact same thing. And honestly, they would definitely deserve it. Because there's a reason as to why the possession of classified material, the reason why you have to be careful with it is because the enemy is always watching. When I was in Iraq, Afghanistan, they always talked about OPSEC, operational security. Now, the purpose behind operational security is you're not supposed to disclose things that you may think it's not that big of a deal, but to the enemy, that is priceless intel because they are always listening. Here's a good example of that, right? Let's say, for example, I'm a U.S. Army soldier. I'm stationed in Bagram, Afghanistan. If I was to say, well, I'm stationed here at Bagram, Afghanistan right now, I'm about, 50 meters away from the DFAC, that's where my tent's located at. We got about 50 people located inside this tent right now, but it's okay. I mean, some people smell kind of bad. But, it takes, like when I get to the motor pool, it takes about 10 minutes to get to the motor pool. Then after that, it's like a 3-minute drive to the gate. That's enough information for the enemy to draw a picture. Because let's make no mistake about this. The enemy has people, especially in Afghanistan, had people on the inside scouting this stuff. Enough information could put the pieces together to draw a conclusion on where the most sensitive targets might be. That's what operational security necessarily means. You might not think it's necessary information, but to the enemy, that's a gold mine of information. That's enough information to put the pieces together to launch some level of attack that causes the most amount of damage as possible. You don't even have to be that specific. All you have to do is say, well, I can't say too much, but we're going into enemy territory tomorrow in the mountains about 10 miles east of here. That's enough to get the enemy alerted to your location to be waiting for you. It's things like that that people do not take into account. Now, that's just operational security. That's not classified information. It's just operational security information. It's information you shouldn't be sharing whatsoever. However, when you are given classified information, this is information that should not be disclosed to anybody below a certain level. For example, if I'm in possession of classified material, and it could be something as petty as like a new guidance system chip or something like that, if I was to leak any of that information out, that is my ass. As a matter of fact, even if I was like to disclose that to a foreign entity, I could be brought up on charges for these things. This is a very serious matter. If it's marked classified and it's marked in an unsecured location with other classified material, that's a problem. And it needs to be dealt with immediately. Now, I know for a fact nothing is going to happen to these higher up people that had classified materials in their possession. If it's a low-level peon, they're going to get the book thrown at them. But because it's certain people in certain positions, nothing's probably going to happen to them. Now, will Donald Trump be brought up on charges? I don't know. As far as I know, they're building a case on this. We'll see what happens. We'll see if this basically cancels out his ability to run for office, and I hope it does, because I cannot imagine him getting reelected into office. I mean, I'm just a lowly level guy, but I will do everything in my power, within reason, of course. I'm not going to do anything drastic. Like, I would work, like, everything in my power to do my part to spread the message as to why he should never, ever, ever go back into office. I mean, January 6th alone should be the reason as to why he should never be reelected. But that's not good enough for some people. Some people say, oh, I would much rather have Donald Trump. I'd much rather meet tweets than what we have right now, which I laugh at every time somebody says something like that. But the fact of the matter is that there has to be a serious deep dive into everybody that's ever had a level of position or a level of authority within our government that has had access to classified information. That's where we have to start. How many people have made the same mistake and have not found out yet? That's where we got to start off first. And then we've got to have policies put in place that are already in place, but write something that's a little bit more strict. Because we've really got to set the example. I honestly do believe that if you are an elected official and you are in possession of classified material, or if you have been in possession of classified material, you definitely got to pay the piper in some way, shape, or form. It's got to hurt you a little bit, because any other elected official or any other lowly level person would get the absolute shit slapped out of them, and they would deserve it too, because these are very serious things. We don't know what's inside these classified documents, and we don't have a right to know these things. The average American citizen does not have a right to know this information because they do not know how to process this information half the time. I mean, I could talk about this till I'm blue in the face, but the fact of the matter is we have a very serious problem of the handling of information in this country, and we've got to do something about it to fix it. The first thing is set a standard in upholding those standards for everybody. The same standard across the board. If you're not going to punish the lowly level peon the same way you punish the higher echelon person, then you don't have equal systems of justice within this country. It is that simple.
I am Muslim. I am an immigrant, and interestingly, from Africa. Is anyone surprised that I am being targeted? Is anyone surprised that I am somehow deemed unworthy to speak about American foreign policy? Or that they see me as a powerful voice that needs to be silenced? Frankly, it is expected. I am an American who was sent here, by her constituents to represent them in Congress, a refugee who survived the horrors of a civil war, someone who spent her childhood in a refugee camp, someone who knows what it means to have a shot at a better life here in the United States, and someone who believes in the American dream and the American possibility and the promise and the ability to participate in the democratic process. So I will continue to speak up because representation matters. I will continue to speak up for little kids who wonder who's speaking up for them. I will continue to speak up for families around the world who are seeking justice, whether they are displaced in refugee camps or they are hiding under their beds somewhere like I was, waiting for the bullets to stop.
As a fellow New Yorker, I think one of the things that we should talk about here is also one of the disgusting legacies after 9/11 has been the targeting and racism against Muslim Americans throughout the United States of America. And this is an extension of that legacy. Consistency, there is nothing consistent with the Republican Party's continued attack except for the racism and incitement of violence against women of color in this body. I had a member of the Republican caucus threaten my life, and you all and the Republican caucus rewarded him with one of the most prestigious committee assignments in this Congress. Don't tell me this is about consistency. Don't tell me that this is about a condemnation of anti-Semitic remarks when you have a member of the Republican caucus who has talked about Jewish space lasers and an entire amount of tropes and also elevated her to some of the highest committee assignments in this body. This is about targeting women of color in the United States of America. Don't tell me, because I didn't get a single apology when my life was threatened. Thank you.
That was Representative Ilhan Omar and Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez talking about, like, Ilhan Omar, who was just recently kicked out of the Foreign Affairs Committee due to recent anti-Semitic remarks that she had made in the past. So this is a quote from CNN from back in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. So Representative Omar responded to a tweet by journalist Glenn Greenwald that reads, GOP leader Kevin McCarthy, who's now, of course, the Speaker of the House, he threatens punishment for Ilhan Omar from Minnesota and are at Ilhan, Minnesota, and at Rashida Tlaib over their criticism of Israel. It's stunning how much time U.S. political leaders spend defending a foreign nation, even if it means attacking free speech of Americans. Ilhan Omar then replied, "It's all about the Benjamins, baby," followed by musical notes emoji. That caught a lot of flack, especially by members of the Jewish community. Here's the other one. She was also accused of comparing the U.S. and Israel to terrorist organizations like the Taliban and ISIS because she talks about like how atrocities have been committed by the U.S. and Israel, and they've also been, atrocities have also been committed by the Taliban and ISIS. So let's just be perfectly blunt. Since the GOP has retaken the House, they have made it their mission to kick representatives like Ilhan Omar out of the Foreign Affairs Committee. They insist it's because of the rhetoric she has spewed, which they believe targeted Jewish people from around the world. They insist she has no place because of her views. That's bullshit, in my opinion. I could think of a couple reasons as to why they kicked her out of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Oh, geez, I don't know. What could it be? Could it be because she's a Muslim woman? It could also be because she is a refugee Muslim woman from Somalia. Now, it isn't the supposed anti-Semitism that got her kicked out. It's the indifference that got her kicked out. It's one thing to oppose and have a difference of opinion with Representative Ilhan Omar. That's our right as an American. However, people have been targeting her for these reasons I listed ever since she took office. They claim that she married her brother. There has not been any shred of proof by any legitimate sources that she did so. That is just slander. Therefore, it's all a lie as far as I'm concerned. There has not been one legitimate source that has proven this to be true. But it doesn't matter to those that continue to say these things. They're just going to continue to say it. Why? Because that's a part of their reality. It's that simple. She said 9/11 is an event where some people did something. When she spoke at the American Islamic Relations, to which she stated to the group, this is what she actually said. After 9/11, Muslims were being targeted across the country. Not just Muslims, though. Sikhs were. But I want everybody to understand something. The reason why the relations were started was because of what happened after 9/11. But I'm going to be perfectly honest with y'all. It was not just Muslims that were targeted in this country. Sikhs were targeted. I'm talking about Indian Sikhs were targeted. Because idiotic and ignorant ass Americans that don't know the difference between Sikh and Muslim, which I might add, are two completely different religions, two completely different ideologies, two completely different ways of life. And why is that? I'll tell you why. Beards and turbans. This is all idiots in this country have to go on. If you got a beard and a turban, you're automatically a Muslim in their book. Now, I'm not saying all Americans think like this. There are Americans out there that know the difference between Americans and between Muslims and Sikhs. But there are people out there that don't. After 9/11 happened, there was a man that was so irate. He got into a taxi, and there was a man that he saw with a turban, and he went, Assalamu alaikum, and he shot him in the head. The man was a Sikh. First things first, Assalamu alaikum means peace be upon you, which in the Muslim world, you would respond with wa alaikum salam, which means peace be upon you as well. So the fact that you would say salam alaikum before you shoot somebody is completely offensive and completely contradictory to the actual statement itself. So, but the guy did it anyway, and apparently he's serving life in prison. Last time I checked, I didn't get a chance to look into the story just yet. So, but it's no secret that there are people in this country that hate Muslims still. To this day, there are people that still hate Muslims because of what happened at 9/11. And the funny part is that people in this country don't even know that there are different kinds of Muslims. They don't know the difference between Shia and Sunni, which is a shame. I mean, I won't lie. I didn't learn about the difference between Sunni and Shia until I was already in my first deployment in Iraq. Now, I'm not going to go into the detail about like the difference between the two, but I highly suggest those of you that are listening to look it up, Google that shit, go online. What is the difference between Sunni and Shia? Because they are completely different kinds. So whenever I hear people say, oh, Barack Obama's a Muslim, I ask, okay, what kind of a Muslim is he? And they don't know how to answer that question. They're like, well, he's just a typical Muslim. Okay, what's a typical Muslim to you then? And this is coming from people that have never met a Muslim in their life, or they perceive all Muslims as the same, that they're all like, do people not understand that the most densely populated Muslim country is actually Indonesia? I mean, do people not realize that? Of course not. Why? Because they don't take the time to study these things. It's because they're ignorant. They just think all Muslims are all Middle Eastern. Of course not. That's ridiculous, okay? There are a lot of Middle Eastern Muslims, but Muslims are from all different walks of life. There are Muslims in Africa. There are Muslims in South America. There are Muslims in China, the Uyghur Muslims. You got Filipino Muslims. You got Indonesian Muslims. There's Muslims everywhere. But it's just ignorant-ass people that just see turban, beard, Muslim equals Muslim. That's all it is to them. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I'm getting off track. But you can say that you don't like Ilhan Omar because of her beliefs. I'm saying quotation beliefs. But there are many, and I firmly believe that are in the GOP right now. They hate her not because of her opinions or beliefs, but it's because of who she is. Marjorie Taylor Greene is definitely one of them. It is laughable that she would be so critical of Ilhan Omar's supposed anti-Semitic remarks when it was her, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who came up with the wild-ass Jewish space laser bullshit during the California wildfires in Paradise, California in 2018. I mean, there were people that were dumb enough to believe that there were space lasers melting cars into slag. I wish I was making this up, but I heard people actually making these arguments on a podcast I used to listen to, or used to be a part of. You got idiot people out there insisting that they saw lasers in the sky that melted the cars into slag because Dianne Feinstein's husband had investments into a rail system to build across California and just happened to go it's stupid. It's stupidity. But this is the United States of America. There are people out there that truly believe this crap. They swear the deep state is out there invading people's lives for these reasons. It's absurd. But Marjorie Taylor Greene believes this shit. She actually went on Facebook and wrote an entire article about it. Like, I can't make this shit up. She literally did these things. I mean, there are people in this country, especially people in positions of power, that are dumb enough to believe this shit. And it's scary that some of them are actually in positions of power. Now, this is the same Marjorie Taylor Greene that said, if I'd been in charge of January 6th, we would have won and we would have been unarmed. But for some ungodly reason, she gets to stay in office. As a matter of fact, she gets put into a prestigious position in the House Oversight Committee. This is why people laugh at America. Not because of Joe Biden, but because of people like Marjorie Taylor Greene. I mean, I should not be talking about this person this much, but it's because the fact that she is relevant. We're talking about a woman that is, I have no doubt, trying to worm her way in. Should, God forbid, Donald Trump win the nomination for the presidency for the GOP in 2024, I have no doubt that he's going to pick her to be his running mate. Why? Because she won her race in Georgia, and conservative people like her. Why? Why do people like Marjorie Taylor Greene? What exactly has she done that's benefited America? Not a damn thing. It's that simple. She is an absolute... She defies all logic. It's just so absurd how ridiculous she is. But yet people like her for some reason. I find her absolutely disgusting and deplorable. But yet people voted for her. I mean, I could talk about it all day, but again, she gets to keep her office. But could you imagine if Ilhan Omar said anything even remotely close? Is like if we had the Muslim Brotherhood on January 6th and I was in charge of January 6th, we would have won. They would have been armed. You can bet your bottom dollar that the conservative base would have lost their frickin' minds. They would have done everything in their power to get her expelled out of Congress. But because of Marjorie Taylor Greene, she gets to keep her position. Now that is definitely hypocrisy. That's when you know there is no consistency. Now, just remember what AOC was talking about earlier in regards to the death threats. There was a video that was put out of Joe Biden and AOC that are drawn out to look like the Titans from Attack on Titan. Now, for those not aware what Attack on Titan is, it's basically a Japanese anime series, which is a great show. I love it to death. I can't get enough of it. I'm actually almost caught up with it. There's one more episode left, and that's the end of the series, and I'm really saddened by this. But anyway, so the premise behind it is that there's a city with walls, and Titans break in. These are giant people that start eating the small, regular-sized people. And Paul Gosar shared this video of a person with swords attacking Joe Biden and AOC, who were Titans, essentially. That's the death threats that AOC was talking about. Now, the conservative base will say, oh, that was completely innocent. But they are the same people that lost their minds when Kathy Griffin held a mask of Donald Trump that had blood all over it. It's the same shit. It's the same concept. You can't be inconsistent in this regard. One might be a little bit more graphic, but the message is still there. There was no denouncement to the GOP. As a matter of fact, people were laughing about it. They were enjoying this stuff. It's absolutely ludicrous that the GOP is refusing to hold one another accountable. Now, there are probably some that will hold the others accountable, but guess what those people are called? Rhinos. They're not real conservatives. They're not real Republicans. They're just a bunch of assholes. I mean, this is exactly what we're facing with here. AOC has been the target of sexual harassment multiple times, not a peep from the GOP. As a matter of fact, they probably actually support this behavior. Why? Because they have no morals, they have no values, none whatsoever. When I first saw AOC, I thought she was a joke. I didn't like her very much. But I tell you what, I've really warmed up to her. Because I thought that I didn't really think she was that intelligent, but that's just because I wasn't taking time to actually listen to her. But I'll be perfectly honest. She's very intelligent. And I think some people are intimidated by her intelligence. And then you got people like Alex Stein that sexually harassed her on the Capitol steps, calling her big booty Latina and shit like that. It's because guys like that are intimidated by Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. It's not because they say, oh, well, she's stupid. She's not stupid. She's not a dummy. Yeah, she was a bartender, but guess what? Isn't it always the position of the GOP that we want people that can relate to the people, not career politicians? She's not a career politician. She's only on her second term right now. It's because she's a woman? Is that why you don't like her? I mean, I take back everything I said about her. And I'm so glad that she was so fiery about her speech defending Ilhan Omar, because she is 100% justified in that in that regard. Now, I will definitely say for the record, there are some policies that I've heard Ilhan Omar say that I did not agree with her on, and some of the statements that she's made. But the slander that Ilhan Omar received is absolutely abhorrent. This is our country, everybody. Now, it's okay if Marjorie Taylor Greene associates with known anti-Semites like Nick Fuentes, obviously. It's okay if Paul Gosar associates with Nick Fuentes, even though they pretend to not know who they are. It's okay if, Marjorie Taylor Greene asides with insurrectionists who stormed our nation's capital. It's acceptable if she harasses victims of school shootings, but don't you dare let a Muslim woman say something you disagree with. Now, let's just say something straight. Ilhan Omar did, in fact, apologize for her comments about the Benjamins. She recognized she was wrong. She owned up to the fact that she was in the wrong. She feels strongly about what's going on in Palestine because one of her, compatriots, Rashida Tlaib, is of Palestinian descent. So obviously this is going to hit home for her. I mean, would you blame a person that's of Israeli descent if it would hit home for them? Or are you just like, oh, well, who cares about the Palestinians? Palestinians are people too, for crying out loud. But guess who also feels this way? Other Jewish people. There are Jewish people in this country who do support Israel, but they also have enough brain cells to know when some people in Palestine are essentially being genocided and displaced in their own homes, from their own homes. Israel has expanded significantly since it's reclaimed its birthright home, essentially. Now, with Netanyahu about ready to make a return to his position of power, is the situation going to get worse? Now, Secretary of State Blinken is expected to make a visit to Israel to discuss this conflict between the warring nations. But I will definitely say this, in closing for this topic. Ilhan Omar is still a representative for her district. She is a refugee who has gone through some really serious shit, I have no doubt. She came from a warring country, and she has definitely seen some of the ugliness of humanity. And her family has come to this country for a better life. Is this really how we want to continue to treat somebody like this, who is an elected member of our country? Is this really how we want to be remembered? Take that into consideration. So Nikki Haley, who used to be the UN ambassador for the United States and was also the governor for the state of South Carolina, she's expected to announce a bid for president of the United States. Now, I will be perfectly honest about this. Does she have a good chance of winning? If she runs against Donald Trump, probably not. Why? Because there were times where she denounced Donald Trump for his behavior, and people criticized her for that. Do I think she has a good chance of winning? If Donald Trump is running, no, she does not. As a matter of fact, Donald Trump will do everything in his power to denounce her completely. He will talk about how she was overrated. He will continue to talk about how she was not that great as UN ambassador. It's going to get to the point where he's just going to blast her for everything in the book. Now, behind closed doors, they're going to probably be all friendly with each other. But should the debate stage take place where Nikki Haley and Donald Trump come together, they're going to tear each other apart. But that's just how business goes. That's just how things are. But the thing is, she does not have a dog's chance in hell of winning against Donald Trump. Why? Because she's not nearly as inflammatory. She's actually somewhat intelligent compared to Donald Trump, but because she's not belligerent and she's not, a kiss ass like Donald Trump is to those that it's actually Donald Trump that requires people to kiss his ass. But Donald Trump, I have a feeling, is going to use the fact that she used to support him and attack him as a means of attacking her, essentially. He doesn't have any real positions, but he doesn't need positions. It's because people already have their minds made up. There are people out there that will support Donald Trump tomorrow, but won't support Nikki Haley because she stepped down halfway through through Donald Trump's term. Now, would Nikki Haley be a good president? That's not for me to decide. I have no idea. I really didn't take the time to really look into her record as the governor for South Carolina, but she's obviously got some experience as a elected official. She obviously has worked in diplomatic relations. I do worry about the fact that she used to work for Donald Trump as the UN ambassador, but she stepped down, she resigned halfway through, and it's a long story in regards to this. Now, I will definitely say, again, I don't think she has a chance in hell of winning. The only person that can give Trump any real challenge is Ron DeSantis. And even I think that Ron DeSantis doesn't have a chance in hell. There are people out there that think that the best winning ticket is for Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump to work together. But Donald Trump, in my estimate, does not want Ron DeSantis. Why? Because Donald Trump is intimidated by people like DeSantis. We already know that the bridge is burned between him and Mike Pence. He does not want another Mike Pence. He wants somebody that is devout and loyal to Donald Trump. That's the kind of person Donald Trump is. He does not want anybody that gives him any grief or fights back against him because he does not like it when people fight back against him. Donald Trump does not like it when people oppose him. He kicks people out if they oppose him. He will talk about how overrated they are. He will talk about how terrible they are. He's already talked about how he regrets having Mike Pence as his vice president or as his running mate. I don't expect Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley to be his running mate. And honestly, again, I really, really do hope that Donald Trump is not the nominee. We cannot afford to have another Donald Trump presidency. Now, again, could Nikki Haley be the first female president? Of course, anything's possible. Just not as long as Donald Trump is running. I don't see that happening whatsoever. They'll take up any dirt they can to crush her and to demoralize her any way they can, because that's the modus operandi of Donald J. Trump. There's nothing else more I can really say on this topic at this point. So a giant balloon over Billings, Montana, which had originated from our adversary, China, was spotted at an altitude of 60,000 feet. Now, this was first spotted by the Defense Department last Tuesday, but deliberations were made whether or not to shoot it down. Now, General Milley and the Secretary of Defense, Austin, advised against the shooting the balloon down due to the fact of the size of the balloon, which is reported to be as large as 3 school buses. Now, it's just, I gotta say, everybody, I love the fact that we don't use actual systems of measurement. I mean, instead we like to just say the size of 3 football fields or the size of like 3 school buses. I mean, that's what metric we used so people can kind of get an idea of what this means. But it's really funny like how this is our metric to use, essentially. But long story short, they advised against this because they felt like destroying a balloon of this size could create a debris field that could actually put Americans' lives in danger. That's a completely legitimate concern because what goes up must come down. You know, debris of that size could cause some serious concern. Even if it's spread out over a rural area, even if you blow it up in one area, that debris is going to spread out all across an entire massive field. So you have no idea where that debris is going to land. It could hurt people. It could hurt livestock, what have you. Now, I love the fact that the GOP is using Twitter to brag about how weak Biden is and how Trump would have already shot the balloon out of the sky. Well, a question for the GOP, especially the MAGA loyalists. If this was true, why didn't he do it when it happened under his watch? The things that make you go, Well, because apparently, like I said, now I looked into this earlier today. I couldn't find like what event actually took place, but apparently this did actually happen under Trump's watch. When, I don't know, but if I had the source, I'd lay it to you right now. But what's even better is that Donald, I have a Coke problem Jr., blathering about it on Twitter, said the following. It is absolutely hilarious. I love the fact that he says, so if Joe Biden and his administration are too weak to do the obvious and shoot down an enemy surveillance balloon, perhaps we just let the good people of Montana do their thing. I imagine they have the capability and the resolve to do it all themselves, and he puts 3 red balloons up there. Now, here's the funny part. I did mention that it's like 60,000 feet in the air. Now, I love the internet sometimes because some people are absolutely ruthless online. And of course, Twitter is no different. One gentleman by the name of David Gorski said, with what? It's currently flying higher than commercial air routes. Helen Kennedy says, it's 11 miles up, you blithering simpleton. Danny Wallace says, it's 7 miles up, but have you thought about just injecting it with bleach? Spooky Joe says, if it is an airliner altitude, then it is over 7 miles up, well above the effective ceiling of civilian weapons. We have to be under 2 miles in altitude, and even then hitting would require you and your Wheaties in God's ear during morning prayers. Gregory Legaman says, incredible. I make a joke about idiotic armed Americans trying to shoot down the spy balloon, and then June just tweets it out. A gentleman by the name of Michael Berger says, can't wait to hear about the exponentially increasing murder rate in a red state governed by Republicans when the bullets fall to earth and Montanans are killed in a hail of gunfire. Chris Topher says, what if it has radioactive material on it? Shooting it down would spread it for hundreds of miles, putting people at unnecessary risk. You don't have to disagree with everything. You don't have to disagree with everything Democrats do. And finally, Diane H. says, make perfect sense, Junior. After all, your daddy wanted to nuke hurricanes. You're definitely your dad's son. Good effing grief. I mean, this is the reason why it's so funny when people make jokes and they bash the hell out of people like Don Jr. Because you've got people saying, well, why don't we just shoot it out of the sky? Okay, you're not thinking clearly, okay? You don't know what's in there. You don't know what damage it could cause if you do shoot it down and what's next afterwards. So the fact that they held back from this is actually a credit to the Biden administration, honestly. Now, China does insist that this is just a research balloon, and they apologize for the incident. Now, do I believe China? No, of course not. Do I think they're lying? Anything is possible. I'm not saying they are lying, but I'm saying it is possible they're lying. Now, should we have shut it down? It's not for me to say, really. But I will say this, okay? Should we be concerned about this, the fact that this is a Chinese balloon that's over Montana where nuclear weapons are being stored? I will say it like this. China is patient. Now, they can claim all day this is an accident. It was never meant to go off course. Now, I just want to know something, and I think everybody in the audience is asking the same questions, okay? Where was this balloon exactly supposed to go? What was its mission? What purpose does this balloon serve? What kind of research was it doing exactly? What was China hoping to learn exactly? What was the emphasis of this? These are questions I feel the American people have a right to know. Now, I'm pretty sure they'd be asking the same questions if we had a balloon flying over there, or not Beijing, but like over, certain cities over China and whatnot. Now, I'm going to give a little historical context. During World War II, the Japanese used balloons to hold bombs that could be dropped over U.S. soil at a certain time. They were inaccurate and they were very, very highly unreliable. But the shock factor was enough to scare the shit out of regular American citizens. The idea of using balloons as a means of delivering ordnance was unheard of and just seemed completely irrational. However, I will say it like this. As a favorite video game character of mine, Garrus Vakarian quoted in Mass Effect 3, if you don't respect your enemy's capabilities, you're in for one nasty surprise after another. Now, I have no friggin' idea if China is up to something. I'm not going to spread any conspiracy theories. But, what could they be up to at this point? For all we know, this could be just an innocent mistake they made, sure, but I doubt it. With tensions rising between us and the fact that the U.S. is ramping up support for Taiwan, this could be a means of surveilling us. Now, I'm not saying that this is what they're doing, but I'm saying it could be. They could be watching us. They could be studying us. Now, the U.S. government has already stated that if China were to invade Taiwan, that we would, in fact, support Taiwan. China, I believe, is holding back and observing the war in Ukraine right now. I have no doubt that they're watching as Ukraine has taken back territory that was initially lost to the Russians earlier in the war. I have no doubt that they are studying what the situation is going on. Now, they could be testing us. They could be prodding us. They could be testing the boundaries of what we could or could not do. I don't know. It's not for me to decide. However, China is very, very patient. I'll put it this way. So in a book written by Brad Thor, there's a plan called Unrestricted Warfare that was first introduced to me in the book called Full Black. Great book, by the way. I highly suggest you check out Brad Thor's books. Now, while the plan was mentioned in the book, prior to this one, Foreign Influence, it speaks of a plan to fully collapse the United States. The plan is really based on a real military strategy where the Chinese military could, in fact, beat the technologically advanced, superior American military. Now, the writers of the Unrestricted Warfare believe that war against the United States is, in fact, inevitable. Now, in this book, I'm talking about the book Full Black, Attacks on the U.S. come in many forms, ways that soften the battlefield to bring the U.S. to its knees. In the book, each of the attacks were color-coded in strategic locations across the United States to incite fear and panic in the public. Because, let's be honest, this country scares entirely too easily. Now, the first attack in the book was in movie theaters. Now, the first attack, in the United States that took place, was in movie theaters on a Friday night across the country. Think about how many people are in a movie theater on Friday night, typically, now that the pandemic's over with. How many people are in a movie theater on Friday night? You know, you get maybe 100 people in one picture, then you get another 100 people, and then another 100 people. You could 1,500 people could be watching a movie in one movie theaters, in one Regal Cinemas in one evening on a Friday night. Think about that, but take this into consideration as well. The second wave of attacks was at all major airports across the country. Primary attacks at the security checkpoint, and a secondary attack using vehicle-borne IEDs to detonate on the crowd. Now, IEDs are improvised explosive devices, okay? Car bombs to detonate on the crowd who most assuredly would have been in a mass panic. We've seen what happens when there's a mass panic. People are scattering and running in all different directions. The next wave of attacks will be strategic attacks on all major corporations that make the Dow Jones Industrial Act. Could you imagine, if all companies and corporations that make the Dow Jones were all taken down at once? That would be game over. This is where our money goes into. Then the major news outlets would be attacked. The internet, the power grid will go next, which basically means that food doesn't get delivered, gas doesn't get pumped, the internet goes out. That means nobody can get messages sent across. Everything will come to a grinding halt. Food would be left to rot out in the fields, especially at a certain point in time before they can be harvested. Now, while I have not actually read the plan itself, the possibility of this happening is real. The plan for unrestricted warfare is, in fact, real. Now, I'm not saying this is what China is doing. I'm simply saying that the possibility does, in fact, exist. I'm not saying that China is plotting against us. I'm saying that it is entirely possible. When I keep talking about how America scares too easily, for crying out loud, look where our priorities are handled, honestly. While we could be focusing on the issues that really do focus, what's one of the main topics that we're focusing on right now? Whether reality TV show, social media star Jeffree Star, who his NFL boo is. That's where our priorities are. There are people that know the names of every Kardashian, but they couldn't name the last 10 presidents of the United States of America. Our priorities in this country are completely screwed up. And I'm sure I have no doubt that in other countries, their priorities are just as screwed up as ours. I'm talking about our country as a whole. The slightest bit of panic, people lose their shit. They will go out and buy every roll of toilet paper. They will go out and buy every bit of hand sanitizer. They will go out and buy everything, even if they don't need it, because they swear the apocalypse is happening. Why? Because we are not informed well enough in this country. It is completely ridiculous. Now, people are not really panicking about this, and I'm glad nobody's really panicking about this, because I don't know if this is a big deal or not, or if this is something we should really be worried about or not, but I'm simply saying it's something we should be aware of at the end of the day. But I really do believe that the media and our government should definitely keep us informed about these situations, and I feel we have a right to know as to what the purpose of this balloon was. Maybe this is something we're going to find out later down the line. I don't know. This is not for me to decide. This is something that I'm just kind of just wondering. What exactly is the point of that balloon? Why was it there? What was its purpose? Why is it here? It's that simple. Now, I have no doubt that we're doing our own reconnaissance of other adversaries. Yes, that's definitely the thing. And I'm pretty sure if it crashed, we'll be like, oh, that was completely innocent. But the thing is, though, I'm talking about our country. I'm worried about our country as of right now. What was that balloon doing here? Were we right to not shoot it down? I would say for the time being, yes, we were right to not shoot it down, because we don't know what it contained in there. We don't know enough information about there. And this is a decision that's made well below our pay grade whatsoever. So these are just things I want people to take into consideration. And I'm not trying to scare anybody about this, because, again, this is not just – I'm not trying to speculate. I'm just simply saying what does exist, what is real, and what is an entire possibility. But China, make no mistake about it, is an adversary. We might do business with China, but they are still all the same an adversary of the United States of America. The final story I'm going to talk about tonight is the Miami-Dade Police Department on the 2nd of February unveiled a Black History Month themed cop car. It's a black Ford SUV style patrol vehicle with the colors red, yellow, green, blue, and pink, with black fists raised in protest, and finally the outline of the continent Africa printed on it. Now, a police spokeswoman by the name of Officer Kiara Delva stated, "It honors the history and legacy of the black police precinct and the officers who served there." Now, the mayor, the mayor of Miami-Dade basically went on and said, okay, so this is what we got going on. And they actually presented this in a predominantly black district with a predominantly black police department to honor the people that have actually had some level of sacrifice, that has sacrificed all in the line of duty. Now, again, I'm not anti-cop. I'm just anti-bad cop. Let's make no mistake about that, okay? There are good cops, and there are great cops, and there are bad cops, and there are shitty cops. I mean, there's no other way to look about it. So, Miami Police Chief Manuel Morales took the podium to honor the first black men to join the department in 1944. Officers Clyde Lee, Moody Hall, Edward Kimball, John Millage, and Ralph White. And it was basically made in tribute to them. And he's quoted as saying they stood against all odds, not only against those in the community who wished to stop them, but members from their own department that wished to stand in their way, he said. Which I think is quite admirable. I will definitely say it that. Let's just say that social media kind of had a different look on this. There was one person by the name of @Angela_Rye who said, "Who thought of this exactly?" And there was another one that I'm not really going to say because it has a certain slur in there. One person by the name of Chaotic Leftist said, "What if we just put Black History Month on police cars and didn't make any other changes?" Basically meaning, what if we just put Black History Month on the patrol car and did nothing else? One person says, "I've never seen anything more performative and disgusting." One person is quoted saying, "So the city of Miami thinks the only black history occurred in Africa? I'm quite confused." A man by the name of Mike Rivero said, "Instead of focusing on community policing, sensitivity training, increased mental health professionals and policing, etc., the Miami Police Department did this." Which, I agree with those sentiments. Now, what do I think about this, all right? My only question is, what happens to this patrol car after Black History Month? Is it going to solve the rampant problem of systemic racism that still does, in fact, exist in this country? Yes, I said it. Systemic racism is still a problem in this country. It took me a long time to finally acknowledge it, but you know what? That's just because I was blinded by my own ignorance, okay? I didn't believe systemic racism was a problem, but that's just because I was listening to the wrong people, and it's because I was unwilling to read and get uncomfortable with some of this stuff. Systemic racism is a problem in this country. Look at the justice system. Look at who faces a lot of problems with the police more often than other demographics. So, also, will this right all the wrongs that our justice system has inflicted upon minorities to include the black population? Is this just an empty gesture of solidarity? I don't know. I'm sure they probably had every good intention in mind, and it probably is just going to completely blow up in their face. I have no idea. There are people out there that are confused by this and are not sure what exactly is this supposed to mean. I mean, what is going to happen to this police car after Black History Month is over with? That's what I would love to know about this. Is this an empty gesture, or is this a gesture of goodwill to bring people together? I don't know. I'd say, it's a PR nightmare for some, especially for those that, don't really understand what the purpose of this thing is. But I feel like if you're truly trying to make a difference within other minorities within your community or within your district, you got to make efforts to make sure that there's trust between the police and the people in that community. Because just decorating a car, I don't think is going to do it. Actions speak louder than words. You can't just decorate a car and think that's going to solve all the problems. And I hope they didn't think that, because that's not how things work. You actually have to take steps to make sure that things are mitigated. For example, you have to gain trust within your community. The community has to trust the police, and the police have got to trust the community. That's step one. How do you gain that trust? You don't decorate with fancy cars. You do it by action. That's by holding bad cops accountable and encouraging communities to say, listen, trust us and we'll back you up. If you want us to police up your community, you got to help us police up your community as well. I could talk about this all day long, but the thing is, I've never lived these experiences. Growing up, we had a small town of predominantly white people. We had very, very little to worry about, in that regard, because, I'm not saying that there's more crime because of, based upon race. It's just because there was, less to worry about in my hometown. Now it's kind of a shithole, and it's still a predominantly white town. It's kind of a shithole nowadays, and I hate saying that. But the thing is, though, is that it's all about how the community is run. It's all about the trust within the community. It's all about how people are raised. It's all about how there's trust within the police force. If there's no trust in the police force, there's not going to be good policing. If there's not good infrastructure, there's not going to be good police. There's so much that plays into it, especially. But I just think this right here, again, what happens next month? What happens March 1st, 2023? Will that car still have Black History Month on there? Or is it just going to get ripped off and it was just an empty gesture? What happens next? These are the questions I must know. But I'm not going to judge too much on it because it's not my place to really judge upon it. I just ask these questions because I feel like these are questions I feel that need to be asked in this regard. So we'll see what happens on March 1st if that police patrol car is still in operation and if it still has Black History Month on there. So I know I definitely went overboard tonight. I'm overboard by almost 15 minutes, but you know what? I had a lot to talk about. It was kind of to make up for me not doing a show last week, but I'm going to take the time to thank everybody that decided to listen on the replay and everybody that listened live tonight. Thank you so much for everybody, and I really definitely do appreciate you. And hopefully you'll be able to catch me every Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I promise I will then always be on at 7 p.m. at the earliest time as much as I can be. Things happen, life happens, it's just the way the world works. Now, tomorrow I'll be taking part in a panel where we'll be talking about red pillars and incels if they are a part of the problem. Now, I won't be able to share what platform will be streaming this. However, if I see it on the replay, I'll drop the link in this show. But once again, I want to take the time to thank everybody that listened to this, and I hope everybody has a safe weekend, and y'all take care of yourselves. Brought to you by the Alex Kurz Project. We hope you've enjoyed tonight's podcast. Thank you and have a good evening.